So I started this yesterday and I didn't like it all the way that it was going. It happens. So I wiped it down, basically kept sort of the underlying structure of what I had laid out, but I had put in that blue background. I didn't like that at all. And it just some of the heaviness of the painting itself, it just didn't seem to be very cohesive. So, uh, that's okay. And that shows you that it's okay to make drastic changes if necessary. So I'm back here at this point with it, and we'll kind of go from here today, this morning, and see what we can pick up. I left my flower in the garage last night where it was kind of cool, and it stayed pretty close to what it was. It's getting a little bit wilty on some of the edges, but I think I can maintain the general shape and the whole life and idea of it that I had originally. I don't really like the shape that my rose has ended up being either, so I'm going to adjust that. It's just way too much of a round ball on there, and so I have a tendency to do that. I'll be honest. I have a need, I guess, for symmetry, and so I tend to make things nice and round, nice and centered. I've got to fight that all the time. I did use a tool. You'll see like some of these lighter areas there. I use a tool. It is called a color shifter. I get it through the art supply store. They come in a variety of different shapes and sizes. And that works really well for just actually removing sections of paint that perhaps you aren't happy with. It pulls it right out, and I do demonstrate this on one of my YouTube videos if you are interested in seeing some more. So I did that when I decided to kind of wipe this down. I did that on some of the areas just to bring myself back to the actual tinted color of the canvas. As you will see, because I use that beautiful transparent Indian yellow underneath this rose, when I did the subtraction by using the color shifter and brought it right down to the canvas, that color tints the canvas and that stays there, which gives that nice glow underneath. So let's see if we can work with this today and have any more luck with it than what we had yesterday. If not, we'll wipe it out and we'll do it again, and we'll just keep on doing it till we get it right. Here we go. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the shape of that rose. I don't like how that rose ends up looking like this big round ball in the center of the canvas, and my actual rose doesn't look that way, so I just managed to just lose that shape somewhere along the line. And I'm going to do that by actually painting around the outside of the rose. I'm just using, at this point, I'm just using that dark olive green. Mostly it doesn't really matter what color I'm using, I just want to get that sketched in. Part of the thing that's throwing me off is I have this one large petal here that has opened up much more fully than the rest of it, and so it doesn't look quite right when I paint it that way, and yet that is what I'm seeing on there. So let me see if I can get it any more believable today than what it was yesterday. Okay, that's more of what it looks like to me. I have kept the paint pretty thin at this point, mostly just sort of scrubbing it in because I do want to go back over top of things with the thicker paint once I get things a little bit more to my satisfaction and accuracy. So sometimes I start right off the bat with heavy paint, and sometimes I don't. It just really depends partly on the subject matter, partly on what I feel like painting, how I feel like painting on any particular given day. I have a little bit more control this morning over my colors that I'm using because what I put on there yesterday is somewhat dry, or dryish, so I am not fighting so much with that, and I can particularly get in some of my cooler colors here, which is helping me, I think. Squinting down still so I don't lose that value. Okay, I'm not sure that I want any more of that straight purple, but I still have a pretty dark value happening in there. I have two purples on my palette. I don't necessarily always use both of these purples, but for this particular piece, I think I'm going to try this other purple, which is Quinacridone Violet by Richardson. And it is much more of a warmer purple, more in the red tones. I don't spend a lot of time muddling with my paint, with my strokes. I lay them down and I pretty much leave them there. If they're not quite right, then I might shift them a little bit, but I try not to do that too much because that's when you start getting things muddied up. So, and particularly since you like that sort of direct painting method, the more you can lay that down and then just leave it alone, the cleaner your colors are going to be. You can see some of this over in these lights. I also wanted to keep this much more abstracted than what I was getting it originally, so I'll see if I can be a little better about doing that. I used to paint flowers almost exclusively, and you can see some of them on my website if you're not familiar with them, or even on my Facebook. Some of the earlier flowers that I painted, and they were much more, they still had pretty broad strokes, but they had more realism to them than what my landscapes have. And so when I go back to painting flowers again, sometimes it's hard for me not to fall back into that same mode, and I would prefer to keep it much looser and more abstracty. So I've kind of really forced myself to do that, and suggest what I've got happening without everything getting just too specific. I'm using a pretty intense color straight from the tube here. This would be my Quinacridone Rose, because at this point it's mixing in with the color that I just laid on, so I'm able to go a little bolder with that color than what I actually want the final color to be. I'm going to pull up a little bit of alizarin crimson, which is a little bit darker and less intense than the Quinacridone. Just squint down. Difference between transparent and opaque colors you will definitely see when you are painting in alla prima, wet into wet mode, because you're not going to get the same coverage density with your transparents as you get with your opaques. Again, I chose this rose that has these multiple colors to it, and that adds to the challenge of what I'm trying to do here. I have done enough flower painting, I should be able to handle it, but don't ever get too cocky. Squinting down. The flower petals have shifted a little bit from yesterday, so I've got to decide which direction I want to go with things. Keeping it similar to yesterday's flower, but maybe pulling it back a little bit. I want to get that sort of apricot-y color in there now, and I'm going to mix up a bit of cadmium orange and quinacridone rose. Such a beautiful color, but it's too intense. So I'm going to cut it down and try adding a little bit of white to it, and white will cool it off. It will also reduce the intensity a bit. If that doesn't reduce the intensity enough, then I would add a little bit of green to it, the complement basically of the color. It seems to be pretty good shade there. Try that in a few places here. Just in comparison, back and forth between the subject and my painting, I'm still being sure to continue to squint down so that I'm not seeing things too sharply and too much in detail. A rose can get very structured and complicated very quickly. I do want to describe it, but I don't want to overwork it, so I need to get some of this color introduced into those purpley colors that I put in first, which was the plan. We'll see if we can do this without things getting too muddy, and a big part of that is just laying it down and leaving it alone. A little bit lighter here. Light is really hitting this one area. In here. That area is a little cooler, so I don't want to touch it with this warm color. But I'm going to keep on working with this warm color as long as I've got it on my brush. So we're just kind of looking through to see where these shapes are at. a warm area right down in here. That is one of those areas where you've got that sort of glow happening. See, it's right there. And right down here. Trying to keep my value while increasing the intensity and temperature. Okay, it's a pretty good start on that particular color. There are a few areas that are actually even warmer, so I'm going to add a little bit of cad yellow medium into that sort of apricot mixture that I had. A little bit more white, too much white, or cad. Pick up a little bit of my Gamblin medium here. I use Gamblin acid-free gel for a medium. When I have started painting, I no longer, other than to clean out my brushes, I no longer use mineral spirits. Once I've started laying, and I don't use it to dilute down my paints, I use the gel medium if I feel like I want to get a little bit more control over color. My paint a little thinned out. There's a yellow color right down in here. It's kind of vibrating through. There's a green actually. I'm going to go with this golden green color that I have in my palette sometimes that it's putting here. Use that same color with a little bit more yellow added to it. In here, it's like the very core of this rose has some sort of yellow green in it. I think I can get away with that. And continue on and see how that compares once I keep on going. I'm going to take some of my purple now and lighten it up with some white, titanium white. I'm going to add a little bit of radiant pink in with it, which is a Gamblin color. You can mix these colors also. You don't have to use all of the tube colors that I use. I just happen to like working with colors from the tube. I got a lot of some favorites, and this might be a little too cool. Get a little bit more in here before I make that decision. Yeah, it's a little too cool, so I'm going to add a little bit of my sort of apricot color in there to it. Should be somewhere between cool and warm. I'm going to do some of the quinacridone rose with some of that pink and reduce it down with a little bit of white. It's going to be pretty intense. It makes it too intense, but let me see if it combines with what I've got on there to create that cooler tone. This is where you have that sort of broken color where you use something that's not exactly the color that you're seeing, and then lay another color right next to that so that you create that sort of juxtaposed color that then blends in the viewer's eye. That petal out there is actually a little bit greenish, and I don't know if I want to try and pull that out or not. Part of it is because I have another artificial light coming through on the other side of it, so that I've got a good light to do the video with, and I'm not sure that that is something I want to enhance. Let me give it a try and see what happens. From that green gold, mixing it in with a little bit of my dark apricot color. I don't know. Let me keep on. Let me try a little bit of that purple in there. It's like I'm losing the color of the rose completely. Maybe that works. I think I see a little bit of warmth right in here. Sometimes it doesn't take very much to describe something. No, I want that to be more of a purple color here. Too purple. Back to my quinacridone rose mixture here, because it's mixing with the purple that's already on there. And I've maybe described that rose about as far as I want to, other than the Midas lights. Let's add some of those in there, and then quit fiddling with it. I think I'm seeing just a cad yellow medium combined with a white to lighten it up and cool it off a little bit. Nope, cooled it off too much. I'm going to add a little bit of cad orange in there. And that brilliant yellow light that I have suggested to you. I think you said that you had bought some. Okay, squint down and just see where the peaks of real intense color are happening on this rose. Okay, let's move on before we get all fiddled with that flower. I want to keep the background pretty abstract, but I need something to kind of balance things out. So, I didn't like the way that blue worked in there, but I am going to mix up a little bit of blue with the olive green so that I can get a little dark here, but it's going to be a little warmer dark than what I had yesterday. At this point, I just get quite abstract and decide where I need shapes, light and dark. And And I'm not sure that I'm going to define anything else much, but we'll play with it. This is, excuse me, where your creative genius comes into play. And you are very good at that, so you will have some fun here. I'm giving a suggestion of what is back there without over describing it. At least that's my goal here. We'll see if I can stick to it while still getting in enough interest to not look like the painting's only half done. There's always the trick when you're doing some more abstracted kind of thing, is enough to lead the viewer, enough to make it interesting, enough to suggest what it is that you've got in there that you want to suggest, but not so much that it becomes fussy and fiddle and overworked. Like this purple color. Purple is one of my favorite colors, but I don't know how to do it either. Working over the whole canvas, especially now at this point, I'm trying to create a design with the composition, so I really need to just keep working every area. And I think I will bring in some of this nice purple down here on the rose, exaggerate it to help balance out some of that composition. Purple that far too close to the edge. Maybe that's all right. This is the brush that I like to use for so much. It is just a nice, it's a bright silver bristle bright. This is a number 4, and I've actually not used any other brush other than my color shifter that I used earlier for this entire painting yet at this point. It doesn't necessarily mean that that is the only brush I will use, but that purple there on the edge, as I was afraid, is a little too strong. Pick up some of my palette mud here and put it on a softer color here. Maybe what I will try doing here is just maybe describing like one of these flowers. And it's all going to happen by the way the light hits it. So let me see here. Maybe show you another. So that you get a sense that these are flowers without it being too descriptive. Maybe put them up here. Maybe design. I don't know. These things have a lot of that. That petal down there on the bottom is too dark. Mostly quinacridone rose here with a lot of white added to it. Trying to just catch the light here on a couple of these flowers, just enough to where they kind of have some shape to them without being too much. That's probably a little too much. It's okay. Maybe it's not too much. Let's pick up what's happening there within the rose a little bit. Maybe that isn't too much. Purple there that I put into the side of that rose is too intense. I don't like what's happening there, so I'm going to tone it down a bit. And this is too dark, so I need to pull that up a bit. What color? I think more of my warmer peachy shade in there. Even more. Clean paper towel here. I dip it in the mineral spirits and then wipe it on a paper towel. I kind of like that sort of warmish yellow ochre color that's happening back here. I don't want it to be too warm, but I think I'm going to play that up a little bit. Well, at least I'm going to try that and see what that looks like if I make this whole thing almost sort of glow a bit. This may not stay. We'll see. This is an experiment. It's colorful. You might be getting a little garish. It's alright. It's alright. Let's tone it down. Shapes up. A lot of painting for me, at least at this point, is extremely working with intuition and it's just stepping back, looking at it, making decisions, and diving in. I figure I can always undo something I don't like, so I try to be bold and brave, especially when I'm layering in some pretty thick paint, because that is where the dynamic sense of your painting is going to come in, is when you really see the boldness in your stroke, and it suggests you're not afraid, and maybe you are. Do it anyway. Don't let the audience know. I wanted to add a little bit of that sort of rosy peach color down in that little tabletop, almost as if there is a petal from a rose laying there or something. I think that will help with the composition to kind of tie things in together. So I put this down here on purpose. I don't know, it's pretty wild, but I don't hate it. One thing that I can also do is sort of live with what I've created, because I can always come back the next day and reduce the colors down a bit. Maybe this color right here is just a little too much. Making decisions here. Stopping and making decisions all throughout the process. It's easier to tone down an overly bright canvas than it is to bring back brightness into something that you have gotten too neutralized. So think about that when you are making your decisions. I want this to be so intense. Let's try to get some down. I generally would step back a lot more frequently and give myself a little more time to think through some of my decisions. I am not doing that as much as normal because of the video, and that I'm trying to keep things moving along on the video. So don't hesitate to step back, even across the room, go fill up your coffee cup. Give yourself a little bit of a break to come at it with fresh eyes. And because I'm not doing that, it's a little harder for me to know if my decisions I'm making are good ones or not. There's a sweet maybe a composition happening like this. Might work. I like sort of these blocky strokes. That again is just kind of a personal thing, so do it if you like or don't. It's kind of where you find your own technique and response to things. Also use my strokes as a directional tool a lot. So pulling these, like for example, into almost a circular motion to keep you from falling off the edge of the canvas. But also you want to be careful that you don't become monotonous in your strokes. I'm going to send you some images of a couple of artists that paint very abstract florals that I think you will like. You may already be familiar with them, but if not, I think you'll enjoy what they bring to the table. Pull that up a bit down there, maybe. I think I do. Try it and see. Right now I'm thinking I want that to be more intense. Balance out some of the intensity in the rose. I like this little balance up here, but I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do with it. It doesn't feel quite finished. I'm gonna try purple on there. Okay, I need to take a break so that I can look at it from fresh eyes. I am far enough along with it to where now the decisions I'm making can kind of make or break it. So I need to stop and look at it with fresh eyes and come back at it a little bit later. So you might be getting some glare on it. So this is, you know, basically what we've got here, and yeah, it's pretty colorful, but I like color, so I think I'm cool with that. I don't want to get too much more involved with the rose, but I need to make sure that I haven't lost the values in the rose. That's my biggest concern, because those colors are so intense. It's easy to lose your values, and your values become much lighter than what they really are. And I gotta be sure of that, because also it is a rose and it wants to be delicate, and it also wants to be colorful, so I don't want to lose the sense of the color in it either. So that's where we are, and let's see where we go after that.